I've messed up. Just kidding, I mess up every day. So in this video, we're gonna be talking about the 5 biggest mistakes that I've made so far since owning a business. And honestly, just so you don't have to make the same ones. And we're gonna go over things like kind of like cash flow and people management and things like that. And so I'm excited, so let's dive in. So this is number 1, understanding your cash flow. So for me, as I went to school, I learned about what cash flow was. Grant Cardone always told me what cash flow was. And I understood it conceptually, but I did not understand it in like a real life scenario. And so I had a really hard time making sure that my vendors were paid on time and that my payroll was getting cut early or getting their checks right on time. It was just kind of confusing. I was like, oh, where's all the money? Yeah, so really just understanding the actual process of, when your money's coming in, who's gonna be collecting that money? So you gotta think about, okay, if I have my collection list, which we use an AR, if you don't know what AR is, it's accounts receivable. So we use an accounts receivable summary and we go through each, column of how long their days are off from their invoice. And that's how we try to figure out where the money's coming in at and when. And based on that, it gives me a structure to really focus on, my team to be like, hey, we need money coming in here. Then I look at my payables department and start talking to them and saying, okay, it looks like we need to be getting all of the payables done on this day, this time to make sure it works. But the money isn't here yet. So since I go off of the way I do accounting, we use an accrual system rather than a cash system. I don't know what they're called. We'll use accrual, so that means that it shows money coming in if we've invoiced in a job. So basically it's looking at the collections, so I call them collections, but the accounts receivable and the accounts payable and making sure the money is coming in on target so that the payables can pay on time. It's just something to really look at, And with that, also understanding what your costs are, I know that cash flow isn't particularly about costs and everything, but you can see where your money's going. What are you really spending all your cash on? Because cash is literally the most important part of this whole game, is to understand what you're spending your money on. So from there, you can start going into your profit and loss summary and start looking at that and saying, okay, I'm spending this much money on marketing per month. Okay, what is that in correlation to how much money's coming in? Okay, well, how many products am I selling per month? And what do they make? And then that just starts the chain reaction of figuring out what's going on in the business. Understand your cash flow for real. Oh, dude, I drank literally a liter of coffee this morning. Khalifa, shout out. This is number dos, is having processes in place before you start really going for marketing. And what I mean by this, is really like when I was looking at my shop and I thought we were all dialed in. Then I went to the office and I was like, oh, we're all dialed in. And so what I started doing is really pushing the marketing game and saying, hey, let's get somebody here to help me, kind of push these brands or our brand. Let's get somebody doing newsletters. Let's start getting more sales, right? But what I found was that we weren't ready for more sales because our current customers weren't being taken care of the way that that I hoped. And so then we were like, okay, we need to back up, take a break and look at each process. And we started discovering a bunch of inefficiencies and a bunch of things that we thought could be really improved on the customer experience and stuff. That's when I really had to pedal back and not push marketing. So how this can apply to you, if you look at your current business or a business you want to create, you got to think, okay, am I going to create the business and start marketing and getting more sales and then I'll follow the process along the way? Or am I going to create a process, then go out and start getting sales and then put that right in my, pipeline, my process to be able to, get that all the way through to product or service or whatever? I kind of feel like it's both, to be honest. I think there has to be a little bit of marketing and trying to get more sales. Also knowing that your processes aren't perfect, but you can adapt and pivot along the way. That's kind of where I stand on that. So you can kind of take that however. I think the more I spent on processes, I wouldn't go out and get any sales because they're not perfect. And part of me thinks they'll never be perfect. Get hopefully somewhere where it's a really good experience for, for a customer to come in and enjoy the process, get their product on time, make it look good, and so that they're stoked. So I'm kind of taking the philosophy of let's get our processes as, close and dialed in to what we can and achieve reasonably, and then start really trying to go after sales and then kind of adjust and pivot along the way. So anyway, that's kind of what you can do in your own business or when you're starting it out. Okay, this is number 3. And this one was tough for me because I've lost a lot of money from not knowing this. So make sure to get your books looked over by an accountant or someone that can do kind of an audit on the book so you can understand them and see exactly where money is going. And I did spend some time on this, but then as I realized over time, is to really like dive into them and make sure everything's categorized how I understand it. And so really spend a lot of time, whatever software you have, if it's an Excel sheet, if it's QuickBooks or whatever you're using, spend some time to go through it on your chart of accounts, which is basically the list of categories you're trying to keep track of, your expenses and income, and really just dial that in so you understand it. And then from there, you can make sure that you're making good decisions. I thought when I was looking at the books, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff I have to report to my accountant and to talk to them and say like, okay, this is how much the court fees were, or this is how much, whatever it is, this is how much I spent on marketing this year. No, they literally need to know like your income and your expenses. And then from there, everything else is for tax reasons and also for good business decision making. And so the things that I record, I simplified it so that I can understand it, because I'm kind of like dumb sometimes, So I had to like simplify it and say, okay, anything that goes with a vehicle goes in this category. Anything that we sell to a customer goes in this category. And that's kind of where I went from there. So really understanding your books is mega. Like for me, I made mistakes too. So I would look at my books and think, oh, we have all this money in the accounts. But since I'm on a different, accounting software and we were going on accrual, I thought there was money there. I would spend it and then I'd realize, oh my gosh, I need that money for payroll. And yeah, just kind of living on the edge. So really understanding your books, and that kind of also refers to my point about cash flow, is understanding, how that all intertwines with your books. Whatever you do, keep a good record of your sales and, and understanding what you should be paid for. So anyway, that's kind of the next thing I wanted to go over. Number 4, having some sort of training platform instead of hiring new employees to get things done. What I mean by that is I was throwing money at getting more people to help me get things done, where I found out that actually it was the people that were here just needed more training and knowledge to be able to accomplish their jobs effectively. And so in your business, you can think, okay, if I'm running a business and I got a few employees and we're not getting things done, take a second and don't just hire more people. Go look at what they're doing and see if you can support them and make their jobs more efficient. People want to get paid more instead of having someone else come in to do the job and they both get paid lower than they wanted. So, we've been really lucky here at Badger to have a really good team. I think we've spent a lot of time on really filtering out what kind of team we want here, what kind of attitudes we want. And that's really where we've been able to, stay tight on. So that's something you got to really think about, is like who's on your team. And then also, instead of hiring more people to solve inefficiencies, look and see if you can help your team and support them through training, through whatever you got to do, so that we can become better and not have to just like keep hiring more people. Because it's really, I think it's cheaper to pay somebody more than hire another person on. And so, actually, in fact, I know that's true. One thing that I learned is that I was getting frustrated because people would ask me like the same questions all the time, and I'd have to re-explain it over and over to different people or to the same person. And that's where I started creating a training platform. And I'm just using like an open source LMS, which is like a learning management system. And we're using links to YouTube on a private channel. And literally I'm just like, I'm using a GoPro, like putting on my head or on my chest and just like doing stuff and explaining as I go. And then I create little templates around that. And that's kind of how I've created my training platform so far. And like I said, I just barely got into this like not even a month ago. So figure out some way to train or to record how to do things. And that way you can actually improve them rather than just like shooting from the hip, which is what I've always done. I would say that was a pretty big mistake, is that we could have got into that earlier. So yeah, there's number 4, Badge meatballs. Number 5 is creating a budget and actually sticking to it. I know it sounds easy, but for me it was really hard, and I still don't have a budget completely done. I've started the process by looking at how much I'm spending per month and trying to understand, for me personally, like, okay, where are you spending all your money on? It really shows you where like your desires and like what you're thinking about. It really shows it through money. And so if I start looking at that, then I got to create, okay, you don't have that much money to spend. So let's think about that. Let's break it down and create, some boundaries of what you can do to keep the business going. Because what's funny is when you think of it like when you're drinking, oh man, what's a good example? Like when you're drinking a gallon of milk, it's way easy. Or no, let's do like fries or something. You're eating fries and there's a ton, so it's like easy to get a lot. But then when you get lower, you're like, oh no, I only have one left. So you start like not eating them as fast. It's kind of like when you have a lot in front of you, it's easy to spend. But if you have a limit, you can really be more conscientious about what you're spending it on. And then with that, you can make other budgets for your other departments on your team, so that you can kind of again, back to my cash flow thing is like, then you can know what should be expected of what they're going to be spending money on and how it's going to affect the business for good or bad. And then you can make adjustments from there. So really create a budget. And I'm kind of like a hypocrite because I haven't finished mine yet, but that would be the biggest mistake that I'm learning for right now. So. All right, so I hope these like tips and tricks kind of help you out. Some of them are kind of obvious, but these are the ones that really affected me the most in my current situation. And again, that's like a screen printing business, and it should apply to like every business. So yeah, hopefully these tips get you started on creating your own business or improving the one you have. Like and sub, leave us like a comment. Like I've noticed that I love when we're able to talk to the community and kind of like understand how we can improve always, you know? So anyway, that's it. Bye.